Girls, and that time that Emily time-shared a plane. Where did we film that? Was it a set or was it an actual plane? Hi, I'm Valerie. I worked on Gilmore Girls and I share a lot of fun facts from behind the scenes, and the answer to that question is pretty simple. But do you want to hear some other fun stories from when I worked on other shows with planes? Because there's a couple times and each time is just a little bit different. So let's talk about it, and make sure to hit that follow button and engage with this post so my posts will show up in your FYP, because that's really the only way that I can make these videos. Also, follow me over on YouTube to catch the ones that don't. First, Emily's plane. Is it a set? Yes. We did not actually build that. That was a rented set. It's basically a place where you could go film anything on a plane. Usually they'll use it for like commercials, or maybe there's only like a few days where that production needs to be on a plane and they're not going to bother to build an entire plane because it is costly for them to do that. Now, I worked on another show, Criminal Minds, which did a very similar thing where they had barrel of the plane rebuilt on stage, but because they filmed in that plane a lot, it was a permanent set, and they have built a structure around it so that the grips and electric can get in the plane, so you can literally walk around the outside of it to do what you need to do, and you can walk inside it to do touches, but they are very tight. Now, the third example, I mentioned it before, but I worked on Sully. Basically took care of the background on Sully. We had a lot of background, and on most normal shows, the background, you get them dressed, they go on the plane, they're fine. On Sully, at the end of every day we filmed for like 2 weeks. Spoiler alert, the plane crashes into the Hudson River and everyone survives. But at the very end of every day, they would film all of the scenes where they tilt the plane in such a way that everybody got wet. So throughout the entire time that you see a passenger on that plane, when we were shooting over at Universal, every single passenger that was at the very back of the plane was wearing a full wetsuit. And then sort of in the middle of the plane, they were all wearing bottom halves of wetsuits because they weren't going to actually get wet. And the way Clint Eastwood movie works is he would work about 10 hours every day, which is great. Definitely not like Gilmore Girls. And the first half of that day was spent doing all the coverage of the plane. But how did we get that plane there? That plane, the same type of plane that Sully had flown. Anyways, it was a decommissioned plane, and they cut it apart, and then they took it and shipped it to Universal, and then they spent a good deal of time building it in the place that they were going to be filming it, which is that Falls Lake area. And then they filled the lake with water, and they built these ramps that we could get the passengers or crew people onto the plane, that we would literally walk over the water. It was like kind of like a little mini bridge into the plane. And then they would pull the ramps away and start to shoot the coverage. And then at the end of the day, they would do the scenes where they were going to be on the wings of the plane, or they were evacuating into the rafts. And it was really cool to be there, but it was just us like sitting there waiting for them to get off the plane. We'd get them dressed in the morning, could not go in the plane during the middle of the day because they would just shoot everything they could. They would come off for lunch. Everyone would eat lunch. They would go back onto the plane. And then at the end of the day, they would come off drenched. And it was a mad scramble to get everybody and their clothes dried for the next day. We had 2 outfits for every single one of those background people. Let me know if you want to hear more stories from other shows that I've worked on, and please make sure to hit all those buttons.